Welcome to the World United. Welcome to the World United.
So I am thrilled to introduce the next speaker. Kristine Bendul is, I've actually known her for many years and didn't know about her story until recently. We've known each other in New York and as fellow performers and such, and it's just been in the past months, the past year basically, that we've dove in, and I got to know more about her story and realized that she has an amazing voice that needs to be heard and message. And so I'm thrilled that she's here. She's a multidisciplinary creative, absolutely true, and an award-winning performing artist, and she is an amazing educator as well. So a little bit about Kristine. Kristine Bendul's professional dance career spans classical ballet, ballroom, commercial, music video, TV, film, and Broadway. That's how I know her, is from the Broadway scene. A director choreographer as well, Helen Hayes nominee and winner of numerous first place titles. Kristine has taught at a university level for students, for schools such as Juilliard and University of Michigan. She's currently an adjunct professor of dance for the Marymount Manhattan College's Theater Arts program. Dedicated to nurturing creative exchange through innovation and creation, Kristine believes in the power of the arts to bridge all cultural divides of age, race, gender, religious background, and sexual orientation, and sharing these gifts to heal the world. So with that, I am thrilled to welcome Kristine Bendul. Welcome to the session.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you so much for having me. I'm beyond honored and humbled to be here. And it's just amazing how life takes us and we meet people, and here we are decades later. It's incredible. I just want to thank everybody who's here watching. And, you know, I have been on this perpetual quest to find out, just I'm sure as we all have, who I am and what's led me on my life path of discovery and how I can be of service. And my intent is to share some of my life story, which begins with me being abandoned as an infant in the street of a foreign country to where I am now. And where I am now is, I believe, in lieu and even because of this. And so I had all these plans to write this phenomenal piece to present. And then life happened and I got hit with this stomach virus. So I've been laid out all week. And you know, it just showed me that on this journey of unity, consciousness, and spirituality, there's so much trust that we have to stand in. And so if you allow me, if you see my arm moving, it's because I'm referring to some notes, because I only had time literally today to kind of bullet point my thoughts. But basically, you know, I want to talk about some of my stories will touch on the subjects of equality and inclusivity, definitely empowerment and love, which, you know, we can't be empowered without love. So let me just dive in and share how I got to where I am now. So as an infant, I was abandoned in the streets of South Korea, and I was found, fortunately. And so don't know exactly how old I was or when, but my age was determined by me being weighed and measured and then subtract that amount of time from that day. And so my birthday was written as April 3rd, which makes me an Aries, which I think they must have been somewhat accurate because I definitely am a fiery Aries for sure. I was adopted by the Bendul family in Emerson, New Jersey. Pat was my mom, Patricia Bendul, and my dad is Tom Bendul, and they had two biological sons, my older brothers, Scott and Keith, and we had our German Shepherd named Wolf. And I grew up in such a beautifully loving home that even though I knew I looked different, I never felt different. And we had these photo albums in the house on the little shelf by the coffee table where from the moment I could remember speech, that I was always taught my story, that I came on a plane and I was adopted. And so I understood what that meant. I grew up in a small town. I grew up in Emerson, New Jersey, very northeast tip of Jersey. So predominantly Irish, Italian, Irish American, or American Irish, I should say, and American Italians. Or maybe I'm even saying that wrong. Anyway, so predominantly what we would consider Caucasian. So there were not many people of color. And the amazing thing is, in my town, there was one other family that adopted an Asian child that same year, and her name is Mary. And our parents knew to raise us together so that we would never feel different. We only connected at dance school, though. In this tiny town, they had 3 separate middle schools, grade schools. So she went to Catholic school, I went to public school, and then there was a separate middle school. And all I know is that I just always felt very right, which is such a gift, because nowadays I get treated how I look, and that is horribly shocking. But, you know, my upbringing, what my parents instilled in me was so much love. And I just want to tell a story about how amazing it was that I didn't feel different. So basically, when they decided to adopt me, they sat my brothers down and they explained what they planned to do. And my brothers at the time were probably between 6 and 8 years old. And so old enough to understand big change, also old enough to understand that the baby would not look like the family. And my parents were always very open, saying if they had any questions throughout the process to ask them. And my oldest brother was the one who would vacillate back and forth between, okay, let's do this, or no, I changed my mind. The younger of the two was very excited, so he could now be a big brother. And anyway, the beautiful story about my older brother, his name is Scott, was that throughout all the ups and downs, once the family had gotten my picture and I was definitely on my way, my mom said it was a 9-month process, so almost like a real pregnancy. And Scott went through all this doubt of what if there's a new baby, who's going to hold my hand? Because mom would hold Keith's hand, dad would hold his hand, and he was always worried he would get displaced. And his questions for a child were very valid. You know, there was a 4-piece kitchen table. They each had a chair. Where would he sit? Would he get booted out? And so there were many, many concerns like this coming up, and up until the day of my adoption. And when they brought me home from the airport, the neighbors had thrown a surprise welcome home Kristine party. So at one point, my mother's instinct came in, and she realized she hadn't seen Scott in a long time. And she was on heightened alert, super worried. They had everyone search, the house, which wasn't very big. It was a 3-bedroom ranch-style house, the basement, the yard. She couldn't find Scott anywhere. And mind you, by this time in the party, I had flown many, many, many hours, and it took even more hours to get back from the airport to New Jersey. So I was tired. She had laid me down. And at one point, she felt to go check in on me, and she saw Scott standing at the foot of my crib crying, just looking at me crying. And she thought, oh my God, what have I done to my own child? And she went up to Scott and put her arm around him and said, Scott, it's going to be okay. We'll work this out. We're going to get through this. And he looked at her and he said, Mom, we can't ever tell her she's different. And my mom had no idea what that meant, or that she couldn't, I mean, she knew what that meant, but she was expecting that the tears were from the sadness of them continuing with the adoption. And she just looked at him and said, honey, someday she's going to be old enough and look in the mirror and know she's different. And Scott, who by that time he was 10, he said, not if we love her enough. And so that's just a little background of how much love my parents had instilled in us growing up. And my brothers were my heroes growing up, and I always wanted to be like them. And, you know, they continually empowered me throughout my childhood, and I wanted to do everything they did. They raced dirt bikes. I raced dirt bikes. I was the little mascot for Westwood Cycle, the only girl that would ride. And at the time, there weren't even bikes small enough for me. And so the Westwood Cycle owner had a daughter also, and he made these 2 prototypes so that I could ride a two-wheeler. So when I first started riding, I rode the big wheels, and then ended up wanting to ride a two-wheeler once I turned 5. And the deal was I had to learn how to ride a two-wheeler first, but there wasn't anything small enough for me. So I was lucky enough to get that prototype bike, and again, just stand in my confidence that I'm going to ride bikes with all the boys who are much bigger than me. I got knocked down, I got ridden over, and every time I would pick that bicycle up and I would finish the race walking my bike all cut and bruised. And I was so blessed to again have that experience. Part of who I am, another little story I'll tell is that you know, the last name Bendul it's actually Polish. So my dad he is half Irish, half Polish. And when I was really little, they told me the story that my parents brought me to the grocery store, and we were in the checkout line, and I was standing on the floor. My mom was up front by the cashier. My dad was unloading groceries, and I was standing on the floor, and there was a little boy behind me. It was winter, and I had this silly little winter jacket that I never liked. I would always cry when they made me put it on, but it had like a long pointy hood with a cone, like pom-pom at the end. And he was hitting the back of my hood and just saying, Chinese, Chinese. And I kept telling him to stop, and he would not stop it. And I got to the point where I turned around and I shoved him so hard he fell over, and I said, I'm not Chinese, I'm Kristine Bendul, I'm Polish. And basically, you know, I was so proud to be a Bendul. And so my father, the whole story was he was a Polish prince. So that made me a Polish princess. And just in that story, I realized so many things I knew who I was at that age, at that little age. I knew I wasn't Chinese. I knew I was right to stand my ground. And after I had asked him to stop bothering me, I knew I had nothing to fear when I pushed him, because you don't hit in our house, you don't start fights, you know. And my parents would say to me when telling the story later that the mother never once scolded or reprimanded his child for bullying me. She only got upset when I turned around and defended myself. And, you know, the theme of empowerment and, you know, finding our voice and when to speak up is definitely a constant. And I believe that's for all of us. And, you know, when I was younger, I knew who I was. And as I got older, out into the real world, it's so crazy how that all started to evolve, because growing up in a small town, everyone knew me. And so going back to my girlfriend, who was also adopted, our parents knew that kids can be very cruel. And for us to look different from our families, we would probably get a lot of slack. And so they raised us together so that we would know, well, there was nothing wrong with us. Look, there's somebody just like me. And so we were like sisters growing up. We're still close today. She has since, very many years ago, decades ago, moved to North Carolina. and she's still like my sister today. And I think that we were lucky not to face the brunt of the world's ignorance because of, again, growing up in such a small community. Well, everybody kind of knew everybody else. And so going out into the real world, which the vehicle for me was through my dance, I was, it was a little bit of a culture shock, and it continues to be so. Seeing how the world has changed and everything that's happening today is really unfortunate. But I will say, as far as my ballet, my dance career started in ballet. And I was very fortunate that even though I started at such an early age, late age, at 12, normally girls are going on point by then, I had such incredible training. I was caught up to my level within a year and a half. And I ended up in New Jersey Ballet Company, and I was selected by the new artistic director who'd come in to replace Edward Villela. And this would have been in the late 80s. Anyway, his name was Leonid Kozlov, and he and his ex-wife had defected from the USSR and ended up at New York City Ballet Company, where they became stars there. And he was brought in, and that particular class that I was evaluating, he was evaluating, I happened to be taking, and he asked that I be part of the company that tour to Taiwan alongside City Ballet and select members of New York City Ballet Company, New Jersey. I'm so sorry, my mouth is not working. My brain's been horizontal for like 3 days, so thank you for bearing with me. So anyway, I was asked at 15 to tour to Taiwan with New Jersey Ballet Company and New York City Ballet Company. And it was obviously a huge ordeal. It was a huge trip. And it was also the first time I was in a country where I was surrounded by people who looked like me. And I did not quite put two and two together that I looked like them. Everybody else did, and I did not. And there was one day I was with a lot of the dancers. I want to say we were in a McDonald's or something. And I was still so amazed. And I actually said, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're the only white people in here. And the other dancers just burst out laughing, and I didn't understand what they were laughing at. And one of them asked me, do you realize what you just said? And, race identity is so interesting because, again, I was loved so much. I never felt different from the people around me. And that those included the members of the dance company. I never felt different. And so I was so empowered that I did not feel different. And that was an interesting story for me. And I believe it was after that I became more aware that, wow, if I wanted to get lost or fool someone, I could easily duck into this shop here. Nobody would be able to find me. And that's when I think I became more aware of, perception of how people treat us from what we look like on the outside as opposed to what we look like on the inside.
Kristine,
But yes, I'm at
about
time.
you have about 3 or 4 minutes to wrap
Okay.
up. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So, but basically, going back to my ideas of and messages of equality, inclusivity, I have faced things now later in life where, like I said, unfortunately today, in day of COVID, there has been a lot of ignorance around the world, and I'm affronted on almost a daily basis, which is horrible. So I really truly believe in inequality and inclusivity on a global scale. I believe that we have to empower, that we empower through love. I believe that true love, true unconditional love is colorblind. And, we must do our best to come and support each other. Even today, I have a dance partner that we have been so fortunate to be the lead subjects of a documentary called Follow, Lead, Love. And basically, we exchange roles of lead follow. And we believe that everyone needs to learn when to lead. Everyone needs to learn when to listen and follow. And through that act, we can come and we can unite and we can empower each other. And I guess I'm going to leave it at that. So thank you for letting me be a little bit all over the map because of my virus, but I'm so grateful to be here. So thank you so much, Sean.
That was fabulous. Thank you so much. And what a powerful story. Go ahead and stay on. We'll have Manja come back on because we're going to just jump in and do a couple of questions, kind of panel discussion between the two of you, and then we'll finish up with those. And oh, Manja dropped off. Let me see. Jose is there. Let me just check and see. I just have to tell you, maybe she'll jump on in just a second, but I just have to say, loved that amazing example of inclusion through love, because that's what it's about. If the world can be like your family, right? I mean, seriously, that's to be able to just be love them so much, like Scott. Was it Scott said? If we love her so much, then she won't have to deal with all those problems. And that would how beautiful, how prophetic, how true. If we can love each other so much, then all of that will go away, and yeah, it won't plague us anymore in our human family. So I just love that. And a lot of people don't know, but I'm totally with you on when I first learned. So I'm a professional ballroom, did national championships and such, and I learned the follow, not just the lead, because it made me a better leader and made me a much more well-rounded dancer and ballroom dancer, because I could flip back and forth and follow and be like, oh, that's what it feels like to be led. Like, okay, I need to do it more like that. And then, you switch back and forth, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, you get the other perspective. You literally walk in the other person's shoes. And what a powerful, beautiful thing that was for me. So loving where you're going with the documentary and such.